The monstrous Takeshi Morishima spent the better part of 2007 rolling Ring of Honor as its champion. Nigel McGuinness dared to challenge him, but the path to glory was brutal. He endured 2 crushing defeats before a third match finally saw him crowned as king. Today we take a look back at the legendary ROH World title reign of Nigel McGuinness and what made it special. In fact, it can be argued Nigel even rivaled Bryan Danielson in that department. You be the judge of that. I won't dilly-dally, let's get straight into this. Nigel McGuinness's first match as champion isn't actually a title defense, it's a survival of the fittest match with Bryan Danielson. The two men wrestled to a 20-minute draw. It's a stark reminder that Bryan's always had a slight edge in the rivalry. After all, it was Bryan who ended Nigel's time as the pure champion. Nigel failed to return the favor by ending Bryan's world title reign. Now that McGuinness carries the company's top prize, it won't be long before Danielson earns the right to challenge for it. Speaking of challengers, Jay Briscoe is first in line for a championship match. The tag team specialist doesn't get cute here. He targets a body part and goes to work in a most ruthless manner. Likewise, Nigel goes for his opponent's arm. This leads to a submission victory. As far as limb work goes, Ring of Honor announced their brand new champion had been dealing with a torn bicep. Instead of staying out of action completely, Nigel steps up to defend the belt against survival of the fittest winner Chris Hero. There's a big beautiful bullseye that almost guarantees the challenger a victory here. In fact, Hero does force a tap out, but the ref immediately recognizes Nigel's foot on the rope and the action continues. McGuinness attacks Hero's arm and forces a submission like he did with Briscoe. The fans chant "Thank you, Nigel," for his gutsy performance. This attitude is about to change. If you think McGuinness's title reign is off to an unlucky start, just you wait until after this next match. You'll think it's downright cursed. Austin Aries is the contender for the Rising Above pay-per-view, and this one's a doozy. On commentary, it's mentioned that some fans have grown to resent Nigel due to him missing key shows because of the bicep tear. Aries dives through the ropes with such velocity that Nigel receives a nasty cut above his eye. And yeah, that blank stare is because Nigel is concussed. On wobbly legs, McGuinness continues. He gradually regains his faculties, at least to a point. Nigel stops a second suicida and proceeds to regain a measure of control. Aries is sent flying to the floor after an amazing lariat. Aries responds with a guardrail brainbuster. A second brainbuster is followed up by a 450. After using his knees to save himself, Nigel goes for a tap out. Austin goes for one of his own with the horns of Aries. Nigel's jawbreaker lariat is countered for a very close near fall. The fans chant for Aries. They want him to take the gold home. Nigel goes for another tap out and ends up hitting the mother of jawbreaker lariats. With that, Nigel gets a pinfall victory. At what cost though? Coming out of that war, the ROH World Champion could not defend his title at Final Battle. If fans were resentful before, this added fuel to the fire. Fans will love you 1 minute and turn their back on you the next. After a brief respite, Nigel McGuinness returns at the end of January. Accompanied by his sweet and sour entourage, Chris Hero gets another title shot, this time within a steel cage. Although tapping the champion out didn't officially count toward a title change, it was enough to grant him this opportunity. The match should be pretty standard heel versus babyface stuff, however, the audience's reaction is interesting. Chants of "Chris is awesome" echo throughout the building. It's clear who the fan favorite is tonight. The bumbling Bobby Dempsey accidentally stops Hero from claiming victory. In the end, the two men go for the escape at the same exact time, with Nigel's feet hitting the floor first. He's won the match, but he's quickly losing the support of the people. For his 5th title defense, Nigel's gotta eat some chops because Roderick Strong brings it. As if Roddy isn't a big enough threat to any man's title reign, Bryan Danielson is next in line to challenge the champion in New York. After taking a pretty good beating from Strong, a lariat off the top rope is followed by a Tower of London face first onto a chair. Nigel looks to have this wrapped up, but Strong pulls out one last incredible flurry of offense. He nearly wins with a Gibson driver. Nigel cuts off further offense with a lariat. Roderick kicks Nigel into the ropes, and he rebounds with the jawbreaker lariat. Nigel's done it again. Now on to the big fish. When Nigel comes out for his match against Danielson, he carries himself differently. The guy's mean mugging worse than my bulldog. The fact is, he's done trying to win these people over. They rejected him, so why fight it? If you can't beat them, join them. The men shake hands and lock up, and I get a feeling of nostalgia. This might sound silly, but this all reminds me of the great rivals I've watched in movies and television. In the exquisite tapestry of fate, two consummate adversaries engage in a primal dance of supremacy. Their purpose etched into the very fabric of their existence from the moment of their inception. Bryan Danielson emerges triumphant in a game of mat-based exchanges. With a flourish of self-assured pride, he encourages chants of USA. Patriotic chants are not the norm for an ROH crowd. A faction of dissenters try to shout the chorus down. What matters is everyone's enmeshed in the spectacle before them. Bryan hits a suicida before a missile dropkick lands the back of Nigel's head on the mat. A suplex exacerbates the situation. Nigel nurses his injury. Paul Turner urges Nigel to continue wrestling. Instead, Nigel decides that through a disqualification, he'll be taking the rest of the night off. Austin Aries leads members of the locker room in threatening McGuinness into getting his butt back into that ring. The match is restarted. Todd Sinclair steps in to officiate the remainder of the contest. The fans chant "F-U Nigel" as he attacks Danielson's shoulder. Nigel reveals a side of himself he's had locked away since his pure champion days. Danielson bides his time and takes action when the time is right. Nigel hurls Bryan to the floor and lets loose a tempest of raw aggression. Danielson can be quite the maestro of mayhem in this element though. Nigel escapes a triangle choke and nails a big-time lariat. Escalating things a bit, a Tower of London on the floor causes both men's skulls to inadvertently smack together. This misstep gets McGuinness some color. Nigel audaciously uses Bryan's kettle mutilation in an act of psychological warfare. Danielson, battered by Nigel's signature arsenal, struggles not to succumb to the London dungeon. Bryan succeeds in locking in his own cattle mutilation. McGuinness, unyielding, refuses to tap. Let's pause here. Context might be needed for some. If you're wondering why Bryan isn't elbowing Nigel into next week here, there's a gentleman's agreement in place. Because of previous head trauma, Bryan said he would not target that part of Nigel's body in this contest, hence why the champ threw a hissy fit about his head bouncing off the mat earlier. Bryan never said anything about not pulverizing Nigel's ribs though. Bryan applies another triangle choke, steadfastly avoiding McGuinness's cranium. Nigel still refuses to go into that good night. Then suddenly, McGuinness weaponizes the very head Danielson spared. He even targets the orbital bone and eyeball scarred from a previous Morishima encounter. With the gloves now discarded, Nigel applies the London dungeon one more time. Drained of vitality, the challenger succumbs to the unrelenting grip. Nigel has done it. He has successfully held onto his belt against his paramount rival. With the clam digger now out of the way, Ring of Honor is Nigel's oyster. Oh, you really think Dragon's in the rear view going forward? Oh, sweet summer child. You're not getting that monkey off your back so easily. Nigel's about to have a terrible weekend, and Bryan's going to be the exclamation point to it. First, Nigel has to work a four-corner survival match against BJ Whitmer, Eric Stevens, and Claudio Castagnoli. And wouldn't you know it, Claudio gets a pinfall victory over the champion. Although the contest was non-title, the loss is embarrassing. The next night, Nigel, McGuinness, and Go Shiozaki tag together against the dream team of Bryan Danielson and Austin Aries. Bryan traps Nigel in the cattle mutilation, while Aries locks in the last chancery on Go Shiozaki, the legal man. There's a simultaneous tap out. Not only is Aries hot on Nigel's heels for a rematch, but now Claudio's going to be an issue, and of course Danielson will be a problem in time. Nigel's about to have a lot on his plate. It's time to talk about Ring of Honor's rising star Tyler Black. This young stud has all the tools to be a big deal in the industry. He's currently saddled with Age of the Fall underneath the learning tree of Jimmy Jacobs, but it's clear to the fans there's untapped potential. At the Take No Prisoners event in Philadelphia, Tyler faces off against Go Shiozaki, Delirious, and Claudio Castagnoli. The winner of this four-corner survival match has an incredible opportunity. They get to main event the show in a world title match. The battle comes down to two men. Tyler Black gets the better of Delirious. He secures his main event with a Phoenix Splash. In a few hours, it's make or break time. When Black comes back out, he looks confident. He doesn't appear to be intimidated by the champ. Nigel begins the contest with a sneak attack. He gives Tyler a harsh welcome into the world title picture. The Philly fans try to get under the skin of McGuinness. Nigel gives it right back to them. Tyler keeps trying to fire back, but he's not being given the chance for an extended period of sustained offense. After driving the kid into the guardrail, Nigel readies a chair to do some real damage. Tyler super kicks the chair into the face of McGuinness. He has the real chance to do something here, but Black crashes and burns into a steel chair Nigel uses to protect himself. Paul Turner considers calling the match. Tyler Black drags himself back into the ring. Nigel assumes he has an easy pin here, but there's still gas in Tyler's tank. He very nearly gets one over on Nigel with a flash pin. Looks like he needs softened up a bit more. Somehow Black finds the strength to make it to the ropes during the London dungeon. He attempts to finally make offensive headway, which results in a paroxysm. Sure, the champ kicks out, but Tyler's finally chipping away at McGuinness. Nigel refuses to let him hit that Phoenix Splash, though. The Jawbreaker is countered into a small package driver. Nigel kicks out. Fans are on their feet. The Phoenix Splash misses and Nigel attempts a submission. As fans chant, "Please don't tap," the challenger nearly catches Nigel with another flash pin. Nigel lariats Tyler through a loop. When he kicks out, Nigel about loses his mind. Black spits his gum into Nigel's face. Nigel delivers an especially nasty Rainmaker. For some reason, it's kicked out of. Well, the Jawbreaker will surely be the end. Oh, never mind. Tyler's been beaten so bad, he thinks he's the Undertaker and this is WrestleMania. Nigel knocks him back down with another lariat, then proceeds to lock in the London dungeon. Tyler taps out. It took everything Nigel had to stop this kid, though. Tyler Black has just established himself as a major threat to Nigel's championship reign, that's for sure. Austin Aries squares up for round 2 with our strutting champ who's sauntering to the ring like he owns the place. Aries starts out with mat work, hunting for the last chancery. Nigel bails to the outside, dodging a repeat of the suicida that bloodied and concussed him last time. Nigel has a game plan, and it's all about turning Aries' arm and shoulder into his personal chew toy, setting the stage for a London dungeon tap-out. Aries avoids the clothesline that devastated him before. He hits the side of Nigel's face with a beautiful dropkick. If Aries can hit that Brainbuster 450 combo, it's lights out. Nigel knows it. They then trade submissions while the fans grow louder and louder. Then it happens. The Brainbuster. The 450. This is not over. Nigel's got a lifeline with a rope break. The fans have reached deafening levels now. Aries, feeling froggy, goes for another suicida. He crashes and burns into the guardrail. Big mistake. Nigel seizes the moment with a lariat that sends Aries into the laps of fans. Aries' limp frame is hauled into the ring for a pin. He's not staying down. A short arm lariat doesn't finish him either. Austin unleashes a desperation crucifix bomb, but it gives Nigel the momentum needed to hit the Jawbreaker lariat. And that's all she wrote, folks. Aries is down and out. Fans chant his name after that performance. It's well deserved. We go into April. A high-stakes four-corner survival gets underway between Rocky Romero, El Generico, Eric Stevens, and Roderick Strong. Much like at Take No Prisoners, this contest will determine Nigel's next challenger, and that's later tonight. The match is charged with tension due to the simmering student-teacher rivalry between Stevens and Strong. When Romero and Strong begin jaw-jacking, Stevens capitalizes on the distraction with a swift victory. The opportunistic feat sets the stage for unintended consequences. Later, as Stevens prepares for his championship bout, Roddy jumps him. He targets Stevens' arm. A strategic choice given the reigning champion's well-known penchant for exploiting that body part. Good old Nigel offers Stevens the option to withdraw from their match tonight. Eric, undeterred, refuses and demands his opportunity to compete immediately. From the opening bell, the champ guns for the compromised arm. No surprise there. Nigel's deliciously vicious. Despite the impairment, Stevens tries to power through. After a Samoan drop, Eric stands toe-to-toe with McGuinness. He hits his signature flying tackle. It doesn't take long for Nigel to go back on the attack, but at least Stevens is able to keep up for a bit. His battery gets drained though. When he goes for a second flying shoulder, Stevens slips and falls. Nigel pounces, and there's a quick tap out. By the way, there's some slight confusion on whether or not the finish was botched. I don't think it was, but let me know in the comments if you've heard differently. Nigel McGuinness has to deal with the inflammatory Kevin Steen at Injustice. Steen's the type of guy to eat a litter of kittens and still get cheered. He keeps on Nigel's case until the champ deploys his go-to strategy of working over the arm and shoulder. The thing is, this only slows Steen down. It's like showering a bear with pepper spray, but it keeps charging. The story is Kevin's pursuit of locking in the sharpshooter. He brilliantly counters Nigel's rebound into that sharpshooter, but he can't maintain the hold as his opponent reaches the ropes. Nigel's in trouble though. After a pump handle neckbreaker, Steen goes for his package pile driver. Nigel takes out the legs, covers Steen, and grabs the middle rope. Yup, that's how this thing ends. El Generico comes out to explain how Nigel got the job done. Too little, too late. An irate Steen has to be escorted away. Claudio Castagnoli appears. He talks about how he and Nigel are similar. He respectfully challenges Nigel for the belt on May 10th at the Hammerstein Ballroom. Nigel goes off. He basically says Claudio's over because of a gimmick and unworthy of his time. We'll see about that. The next week, Nigel is forced to tag with Claudio Castagnoli against Kevin Steen and El Generico. Steen nearly pins Nigel. If not for Claudio knocking Generico into his partner, that would have been it. McGuinness and Steen brawl outside the ring, leaving Claudio alone to pin El Generico with a Ricola bomb. Has Claudio proven himself to you now, Nigel? But of course it was never about that. Claudio already showed the world that he can beat Nigel, and McGuinness doesn't want to find out what will happen in an official title match. The imminent threat is Kevin Steen, as McGuinness has to defend against him again tomorrow night. Kevin Steen strides purposefully through the aisleway for this pivotal opportunity. The fans give the man his props. Nigel McGuinness makes his entrance, and a particularly zealous female screams over and over that she loves him. Chat, is this Riz? Steen performs a cheap low blow before the contest commences, likely dampening the ardor of a certain vocal admirer. Speaking of her, Steen takes his eyes off the prize to taunt the fan. This enables Nigel to pay Kevin back with unsportsmanlike conduct. Steen savagely bites away at McGuinness's pectoral region. It's nipplelicious! The question from the previous match looms. Should Steen successfully lock in his sharpshooter, will Nigel tap? Kev sure tries to get him in the hold, but Nigel probably needs softened up first. Kev hits his big frog splash. Nigel endures. A subsequent package pile driver is enough to end Nigel, but a rope break keeps the title from changing hands. Frustration mounts for Steen. He wants another package pile driver, this time through a table. Nigel reverses the gambit. It's Kevin who goes through. Steen finds himself on Dream Street. Nigel delivers a big-time lariat. Steen proves he's still in this. Nigel wants to steal Kev's package pile driver. It's countered into a near fall. The climax approaches. Steen once again goes for the sharpshooter, but he's clawed in the eyes. With his vision impaired, Kevin Steen takes the jawbreaker lariat. He just couldn't get the job done tonight. As the dust settles, there are some cheers, a lot of boos, and one very happy shrieking lady. It's a very special night for Ring of Honor. It's the company's debut in the Hammerstein Ballroom. The pressure is on Claudio Castagnoli and Nigel McGuinness as they main event this historic show. The atmosphere is amazing. The fans are locked in. So is Claudio. He often has a bit of fun in his matches, with smiles and playing to the crowd. It's not until Claudio thinks he has the upper hand that he gives the people what they want. A foolish blunder. McGuinness is not a person who should be taken lightly. Nigel puts forth his usual brand of punishment. Claudio's best line of defense is his European uppercuts. After stopping the jawbreaker with a bicycle kick, Claudio flies with a tope suicida. Castagnoli is finally showing signs that he's capable of leaving New York as a champion. He knocks Nigel down with one flying European, but he's stopped short of performing another. Nigel takes charge. Claudio goes for a springboard European, but that's foiled as well. Those uppercuts have served Castagnoli well. His key to victory lies in getting them off. Nigel tries his hand at dueling uppercuts, and it does not end well for him as the exchange ends with him eating a Ricola bomb. Huge near fall from the move that beat him once. There's some back and forth in the closing stretch. Claudio becomes determined in getting one more Ricola bomb off. However, the resilient champion has just enough fuel for a London dungeon, while a spent Claudio taps out immediately. An unhappy crowd expresses their disdain through not just booze, but actually throwing garbage. Go Shiozaki finds himself as Nigel McGuinness's partner in a tournament to crown new ROH Tag Team title holders. Across the ring stand Steen and Generico. The man fans affectionately call Mr. Wrestling isn't out of the world champion's hair yet. By the way, Go Shiozaki may be McGuinness's ally here, but tomorrow night he will stand across the ring as a challenger, adding tension to this partnership. The sharpshooter Kev's been looking for during his title matches is applied to McGuinness here. As suspected, Nigel taps out to it. Fueled by hatred, Nigel attempts to break Steen's ankle post-match, but Shiozaki intervenes. McGuinness storms off. The crowd's "You tapped out" chants reverberate, amplifying his frustration. Go Shiozaki comes into this championship match with Nigel heavy-handed, quite literally, as his chops cause a small amount of blood to trickle from his opponent's chest. One Tower of London to the floor knocks Shiozaki to the passenger seat, putting Nigel behind the wheel. The only thing keeping Go Shiozaki from getting completely rolled over here are those nasty chops. After both men hit each other with the big guns, they resort to laying in strikes as both of them begin to tucker out. Nigel surprisingly wins the exchange. Shiozaki kicks Nigel into the ropes. He rebounds with the jawbreaker. He quickly submits Shiozaki after that. Bryan Danielson enters the picture and calls Nigel out for ducking him. He wants another round with the champ, this time on pay-per-view. So, what if Mr. McGuinness becomes a double champion? When Scrap Daddy Adam Pearce challenges Nigel for the ROH World title, Pearce's NWA belt is on the line as well. Of course, Pearce has all of Sweet and Sour Incorporated in his corner. This puts McGuinness in a bit of a babyface spot. Sweet and Sour shenanigans give Pearce an advantage, but they backfire, and Nigel pins Pearce with the jawbreaker. Nigel McGuinness wins the NWA Heavyweight Championship. Nah, not for real. The decision is reversed after Larry Sweeney complains that since Nigel gave the champ a backdrop to the floor, Adam Pearce retains due to disqualification under NWA rules. Before we move on, let's go back about 4 years. Before Nigel McGuinness became an essential part of Ring of Honor, the young British wrestler got to share the ring with the veteran Jerry Lynn. In a match for the #1 contendership for the Ring of Honor Pure Championship, Nigel and Jerry gave fans a very nice technical display. However, the contest came down to high-impact moves. Jerry Lynn put McGuinness away with his cradle pile driver. Holding his head, Nigel needed assistance to the back. Now Jerry Lynn has returned. Although Nigel has grown leaps and bounds since his last match with Jerry, that loss has stuck with him as he tries to weasel his way out of another contest with him. Jerry Lynn acknowledges that he may be an old-timer these days, but he says he still has what it takes to embarrass the champion. Nigel's willing to go through with the match, but he's secure in knowing his championship isn't going anywhere as this contest is non-title. This is a matter of pride. Nigel gets shown up, so in feeling cornered, he tosses Jerry outside in an attempt to regroup. Jerry's not fazed in the slightest. Nigel seemingly changes his tune. He holds the ropes for Jerry Lynn to return to action, so the two men can finish this contest like gentlemen. When Jerry gets Nigel in a side headlock, Nigel sneakily unties his opponent's bootlace. When it's pointed out, Nigel lets a momentarily distracted Jerry Lynn have it. Lynn's introduced to a mean streak that didn't exist 4 years ago. He quickly learns he's not wrestling the same person. This isn't some kid trying to gain knowledge from a veteran. This is a champion who's willing to win by any means necessary. In realizing what he's up against, Jerry Lynn is forced to take things to the next level, firing up everyone in attendance. This isn't an old charity case. We're seeing shades of the man who pushed Rob Van Dam to new heights in the late 90s. We're seeing a man who can possibly defeat the Ring of Honor World Champion. He comes close with a Sunset Powerbomb, but not as close as he comes with a TKO. Oh, fans thought that was it! Nigel wears Lynn down with lariats until finally, a unique pinning combination beats Jerry Lynn. Impressed, the fans chant, "Please come back," as they want to see more of him in Ring of Honor. Nigel McGuinness is quite shaken that the old man was so difficult to put away. Nigel McGuinness ventures into enemy territory, Toronto, Ontario, Canada to be exact. Will Kevin Steen's third title shot be the charm? This time he has his countrymen watching earnestly, with hope that he will finally take the gold home. Steen has his way with Nigel on the outside until this grotesque counter. Seriously, this looks really dangerous. The fans react accordingly. Obviously, that kind of move makes Kevin Steen a sitting duck. Nigel McGuinness has a field day picking at the Canadian's carcass. Steen has one trick up his sleeve that the champion fears. Nigel avoids the sharpshooter and goes back to work. We've seen him tap to it once. McGuinness stays on Steen as he can't allow the challenger a moment's respite. The champion can only do so much though. Steen's still breathing. He can still make a comeback from this. The challenger nails a pop-up powerbomb. It's only a near fall, but Steen is quick to lock in the sharpshooter. Unfortunately, he's too close to the ropes. He needs that thing in the center of the ring. Nigel hits the Tower of London to the floor, which puts Steen right back where he just was. He's not staying down for any 3 counts though. Nigel gets annoyed and locks in his own sharpshooter. Kevin's in a lot of trouble here. He pulls out a spectacular springboard swanton to the outside. This changes everything. Kev locks in the sharpshooter. A big struggle ensues before the ropes save Nigel. The champion survives a pump handle neckbreaker. However, the follow-up, the package pile driver, is also kicked out of. That is a major deal. Fans can't believe their eyes. Nigel's not allowing Steen to damage him with a second one. Nigel begins his lariat barrage, including the jawbreaker. Not many men survive that move, but Kevin Steen does. The lariats continue until Kevin Steen can no longer kick out. What a match. Both men had to reach down deep for that one. Claudio Castagnoli has himself another shot at the champ at New Horizons, but I doubt this goes how you'd expect. It doesn't for Nigel at all. The last time these men locked up, the pace was on the methodical side, at least in the beginning. Tonight, Claudio lets loose. He goes for the kill, quick and early with the Ricola bomb. The man's frustrations are on full display. Every time there's an opportunity for the Ring of Honor title, something goes wrong. He can't win the big one. Add to it that Danielson just beat him at the last event, and you have to understand what's going on with Castagnoli. He's simply fed up. A talent the caliber of Nigel McGuinness will not be steamrolled over. If Claudio is to succeed tonight, it won't be without great effort. Like before, European uppercuts are important here. They afford Claudio a tope suicida. When Nigel goes for a jawbreaker, Claudio smartly transitions into a big swing. Claudio begins throwing his best stuff at Nigel. This includes a second Ricola bomb. Remarkably, McGuinness kicks out. Both men struggle to put the other away in this crucial final minute. Once McGuinness nails his jawbreaker, it all ends. Once again, Claudio has fallen short of achieving his ultimate goal. Something's got to give, and as we're going to see, that's very, very soon. Before moving on, we have to mention the Honor Rumble. It's like the Royal Rumble, of course. The winner gets a world title match. Well, the last entrant is the champion himself. Hey, if he wins, he doesn't have to defend his belt against any of these people, right? The match comes down to just Ruckus and McGuinness. When Nigel attempts his jawbreaker lariat, Ruckus sends him tumbling over the top rope to win the match. As far as who the heck Ruckus is, he's something of a highlight reel guy from CZW. Ruckus has been working mainly multi-man matches in ROH recently as a member of the Vulture Squad. This upcoming title shot against Nigel will be the highest profile thing he's done since being in Ring of Honor. When Ruckus comes for the gold, the story is simple. The champion attempts to dictate a methodical pace because once Ruckus gets going, he does all the cool things you'd expect out of him. Nigel compromises the challenger's high flying by targeting his back. What a unique Boston Crab variation. Ruckus kicks out of a Rainmaker, doesn't allow a superplex to finish him off, and almost scores a quick roll-up after avoiding the jawbreaker. Unfortunately, he's too beat up for much else. A London dungeon takes care of business. We quickly move forward because this next match is pretty major. In a 4-way elimination match, our champion has his gold on the line against Claudio Castagnoli, Tyler Black, and none other than Bryan Danielson. Things get interesting after Claudio hits a pop-up European uppercut and Bryan Danielson reverses his pin attempt, eliminating the Swiss competitor. Claudio's brain has difficulty processing what just happened, but when it sinks in, the dam finally breaks. Bryan Danielson is victimized as a result of Castagnoli finally giving in to something he's been holding back for months. This couldn't work out better for Nigel though. Taking advantage of Claudio's dirty work, McGuinness nails a lariat and eliminates Danielson. However, let's not forget about Tyler Black. We saw what this kid's capable of. Like in their singles encounter, Tyler proves extremely resilient in taking Nigel's offense. However, Nigel must be just as resilient because Tyler begins throwing everything at him, including the small package driver. It's clear that Tyler needs to hit Nigel with his Phoenix Splash. Nigel catches a springboard with a lariat before locking in the move that made Tyler tap before, the London Dungeon. Tyler nearly catches him with a flash pin. That's enough. Nigel lets his rage do the talking, and after a fury-filled lariat, McGuinness still hangs on to the gold. The crowd did not like that, and they aren't shy in allowing it to be known. Regardless, Nigel taunts them in saying he's going to be the Ring of Honor champion forever. Even though Nigel McGuinness has gotten past Kevin Steen for the moment, he has yet to defend his belt against El Generico. At Age of Insanity, this changes, and if Nigel thinks Steen's goofy little sidekick doesn't pose as much of a threat as he did, the champion's about to learn differently. The thing is, as the match begins, McGuinness isn't serious. El Generico is treated as an exhibition opponent. Generico takes McGuinness to the outside and is able to show the champ a little something. Nigel responds by becoming a bit more aggressive. El Generico keeps up though. Nigel grabs a chair. Is it out of frustration, or perhaps it's merely to outsmart El Generico and get the challenger right where Nigel wants him? We've observed Nigel's mean streak against many a challenger, but against Generico, Nigel appears especially cruel. Regardless, Generico keeps Nigel on his toes. The generic luchador takes a licking and keeps on ticking. He eats a hard Tower of London on the ring apron. When rolled inside, he kicks out. Nigel's flying lariat could be a game ender. Generico actually counters the thing though. He follows up by hitting a haluva kick while Nigel does a headstand. At this point, El Generico becomes credible. Fans begin to rally behind him as Nigel attempts to swat him down. He's put into the London Dungeon, and look who it is! Kevin Steen shows up to give his partner the boost he needs to push through. Generico hits a somersault coast to coast. A brainbuster follows. Nigel gets his foot on the bottom rope. After a struggle for turnbuckle positioning, Nigel hits his flying lariat. After kicking out, Generico eats a rainmaker. That's not enough either. Generico gives McGuinness a defiant slap before eating another lariat. Since he kicks out, Nigel locks in a London Dungeon, but El Generico almost catches him with a pinfall. Nigel rebounds from a boot to the face with his jawbreaker. He immediately locks in another London Dungeon. This time, El Generico taps. The generic luchador couldn't take the gold tonight, but this is not the last time he'll be a problem for the champion. Now that Claudio Castagnoli has joined the dark side, teaming with someone of Nigel McGuinness's character is no longer an issue. They face the team of Austin Aries and Bryan Danielson. As a unit, Claudio and Nigel just look good together. I always thought they should have been called Euro Class. You know, a playoff of Euro trash. Obviously, there's nothing trashy about these athletes. There's another woman going nuts for Nigel in the crowd, by the way. He makes the homie say ho and the girlies want to scream. The action boils down to McGuinness and Bryan doing what they do best. Nigel wears Bryan down with lariats. Bryan goes for elbows. Claudio sticks his nose into their business, but Austin Aries wipes him out. Bryan and Nigel duel with uppercuts. A rolling elbow sets Nigel up for the jawbreaker, but Danielson has it scouted. Bryan gets Nigel in position for an elbow barrage before locking in the cattle mutilation. McGuinness taps out. Claudio Castagnoli doesn't allow Bryan a chance to celebrate. He lays a steel chair atop Danielson's skull and gives him a stomp. Austin Aries rolls into the ring, but it's too late to make a difference. What matters is that Bryan made the world champion tap out. This leads to a non-title singles match in Tokyo, Japan. Nigel's quite competent on the mat, as we see in these matches. Even when it looks like McGuinness is taking the lead, Danielson usually comes out showing that he's still one step ahead. Nigel sends Bryan back first into the turnbuckle. It gives him an opening to have a proper go at Dragon. I think there's a bit of overconfidence on Nigel's part. Bryan gets to the ropes, Nigel stubbornly won't back off, and he's struck with an enziguri. A butterfly suplex and a pin attempt follow. Bryan teases a big momentum shift. Nigel stops a suicida and delivers a Tower of London to the floor. That generally gives Nigel a big advantage. However, after getting out of a half crab, Bryan uses an adrenaline burst to rock Nigel in the corner. After delivering repeated elbows, Bryan goes looking for his cattle mutilation. Nigel smartly works the struggle into positioning his opponent for the Tower of London. After kicking out of the move, Bryan and Nigel have what I've always called a bravado spot. Two men looking for a psychological advantage through a display of toughness. Nigel ends it with a knee, hits a flying lariat, and engages in an uppercut exchange. The men begin trading pin attempts. They look dead even until Bryan catches his opponent with a small package. Bryan's been wanting a singles championship match on pay-per-view, and after tonight, it doesn't seem as if Nigel can avoid the collision any longer. Before returning to the States, Nigel McGuinness has to defend his gold in Tokyo. Jimmy Jacobs is his opponent this time, a fresh face, as this is his first time challenging Nigel. Jimmy Jacobs is purely a heel here, and Nigel's something of a babyface due to his tours with Pro Wrestling Noah. Nigel goes for a running lariat on the ramp. Jimmy cuts him off with a spear that causes Nigel's skull to bounce on that ramp. With Nigel's head damaged, Jimmy has a plan. After Nigel survives Jimmy's submission finisher, the End Time, Jacobs knocks the referee out of the way and nails Nigel with a steel chain. Although McGuinness doesn't stay down, Jimmy's in prime position to cause an upset. Jacobs hits a chin breaker while preparing his chain, but Nigel bounces back with the jawbreaker. Nigel has done it again. Next stop, Boston, Massachusetts. The man he meets there is Roderick Strong. Nigel's beaten the man once. Pay-per-view night though, and Roddy's ready to shock the world. He sends a warning shot with a leg lariat that causes the champ to bleed from his mouth. Nigel's tried and true strategy of working over his opponent's left arm and shoulders put into action. Nigel gets hit with a diving forearm right in the already bloodied mouth. Nigel then receives two backbreakers from Roderick. The men begin jockeying for position through a bit of tit-for-tat, with neither man willing to give up any ground. It's after Roderick nails a top turnbuckle backbreaker that he finally gains a clear advantage. The Boston crowd begins buying into the possibility of a title change. Nigel is desperate to shut Roddy down, and a Tower of London to the floor should do just that. A surprising flurry out of Strong follows, and the Gibson driver has everyone thinking the match is over. The fans don't buy Nigel's kickout. They tell Todd Sinclair that was 3. The men struggle for position on the top turnbuckle. A lariat sends Strong flying. He kicks out of the pin attempt. So be it. The champion batters his challenger with a flurry of offense. It's finally too much. Roderick is pinned. There's great disappointment in the air. Regardless, no rest for the wicked. The next night in Philadelphia, the pesky El Generico must be dealt with once more. Easier said than done, of course. El Generico showed Nigel McGuinness what exactly he's made of once, and tonight's not any different. McGuinness hammerlocks Generico's arm and rams his shoulder into the corner. The champ enters demon mode and goes to work. Nigel begins bullying the generic luchador outside the ring. Generico tries to stop Nigel with his boot, but a lariat follows. After utilizing the steel ring post, Nigel continues to pick on Generico in the ring. The challenger sends McGuinness outside and then nails a springboard moonsault. This gives him a slight boost, but it's not quite the momentum shift he's looking for. While Generico is able to chip away at Nigel a bit, it's clear who's in control. Generico suffers a Tower of London to the apron. Nigel's London Dungeon submission is next. El Generico saves himself with a rope break. He then does something genius. He plays possum on the floor. Nigel climbs to the top turnbuckle for a possible dive. Generico springs to life. He tries to pull something major off. Nigel struggles, so Generico feeds him a haluva kick before hitting him with a coast-to-coast. Nigel saves himself with the bottom rope. Nigel is driven to the mat with a brainbuster, but it's not enough. He fires back with his flying lariat. It should be noted that Nigel McGuinness dealt with Kevin Steen earlier in the night, so when he attempts to cheat, he should be free and clear. That's not the case. Kevin Steen shows up anyway. He nearly costs Nigel this match. Generico pushes forward with a haluva kick. He wants a brainbuster on the exposed steel in the corner where Nigel removed the padding. Nigel avoids the disastrous finisher, and with a jackknife pin, he's able to eke out a win. The commentators mentioned that the next time Nigel McGuinness defends his belt in Ring of Honor, he'll have been champion for over a year. So what if Nigel McGuinness has to defend the belt against both Kevin Steen and El Generico at the same time? Let's throw in Go Shiozaki too. In Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the champion must deal with all of these men in an elimination match. Everyone's a title holder here, but only the gold of McGuinness is up for grabs. El Generico and Kevin Steen do not wish to wrestle one another. Nigel shoves Steen into Generico, and it would seem the generic luchador gets heated. The tag team champions don't take the bait and remain united. McGuinness and Shiozaki form an alliance, and together they work over Kevin Steen. His partner enters the fray to stop the double team efforts from taking Steen out of the match completely. Generico suffers a go flasher, and it's he who is eliminated. Steen's in big trouble now because Nigel and Shiozaki are still cooperating together. Kevin endures the efforts of both men and ends up tapping Shiozaki out with a sharpshooter. Steen goes for a moonsault and misses, hurting his left knee. Nigel pounces with his own sharpshooter. After getting to the ropes, Kevin returns the favor with that submission. Nigel also makes it to the ropes. Steen eats the apron from the Tower of London. Nigel wants to hit a second one in the ring. Nigel is shoved into Todd Sinclair. This is his cue to grab his belt and plant Steen face first into it. But El Generico returns. After receiving a haluva kick, Nigel takes the package piledriver. The only thing preventing a title change is his foot on the bottom rope. Kevin tries a swanton, but Nigel gets his knees up. He tries another sharpshooter. Steen pushes him off, and Nigel rebounds with the jawbreaker lariat. 1, 2, 3, it's over. This is perhaps Nigel's most bizarre challenger. The unorthodox Necro Butcher looks to grab Ring of Honor's top prize in Toronto. Noticing Butcher's visible leg injury, Nigel says he'll refrain from attacking that body part if the brawler doesn't punch him in the face. Nigel attempts to steer the match in a no-nonsense direction. Necro surprises Nigel in keeping up with his traditional wrestling style. Nigel, sporting a pre-existing black eye he falsely attributes to Necro, abandons the agreement and goes after the leg. Butcher unleashes his fists, forcing the champ to deal with his raw, unpolished style. Despite a leg-focused attack, Butcher's nothing if not resilient. He takes the worst from McGuinness and won't back down. Nigel grabs his belt to use as a weapon. Paul Turner takes the title away while Nigel goes low. He employs the same trick with a chair. Turner takes the foreign object away while Nigel smashes Necro's face into steel outside the ring. In a surprise twist, Necro almost catches Nigel with a small package. Perhaps he pulled the move out because it's a legit finisher of Nigel's arch nemesis Bryan Danielson. Nigel kicks out of a Tiger Driver before a DQ is called when Age of the Fall members Delirious and Brody Lee pounce on Necro. A subsequent brawl involving Generico erupts, but the chaos doesn't have anything to do with Nigel, so we move on. Yet another multi-person match awaits Nigel. Two of his more fierce adversaries, Tyler Black and Austin Aries, meet him in the ring. This is first fall to a finish, so Nigel refuses to put his belt on the line here. Can you blame him? He's not keen on getting his hands too dirty here. Nigel becomes a cheerleader for Tyler Black. He can soften Austin Aries up while McGuinness simply stands aside to watch. This doesn't last long, and the fans are treated to the kind of action one would expect in this sort of environment. Aries delivers a brainbuster to Tyler from up top, and he gets the pinfall victory tonight. It's kind of crazy this doesn't result in another title opportunity for Aries. At the 2008 Rising Above pay-per-view, Bryan Danielson gets his wish. A one-on-one title shot against Nigel McGuinness. No Claudio, no eliminations, no nonsense. That's not how this plays out at all. The Swiss Superman has turned into Bryan's personal boogeyman. If Bryan's anywhere close to gold, you can rest assured Claudio's waiting in the shadows to rob him of any and all happiness. Bryan expertly dismantles McGuinness. Once Nigel traps Bryan's leg in the ropes and bats him to the mat, you can see serious damage has been done to the knee. This gives Nigel a proper weakness to exploit, and if there's one thing the world champion loves to do, it's focus on a particular body part. Dragon hits a springboard to the outside as he readies a comeback. I apologize, they do a picture-in-picture thing here so you might not see what's happening, but Claudio appears and stomps Bryan's head with a chair. After that attack, Bryan's nearly counted out. Sugarfoot Alex Payne assists Dragon into the ring. Donning the crimson mask, the challenger's right back in the lion's den. It would seem Nigel can easily wrap things up, but Bryan uses a running knee strike to stave off Nigel's impending victory. Danielson slaps a cross-arm breaker on Nigel before turning it into a triangle choke. Even after being hit with elbows, Nigel breaks the hold. He's almost caught off guard by American Dragon's small package. The crowd thought that was it. They're all standing. They can tell this one won't be going much longer. Bryan goes for elbows, but he nearly passes out from blood loss. He clings to consciousness and has a final burst of energy. Nigel's trapped in the cattle mutilation. He struggles to his feet and takes a tiger suplex. After kicking out, Nigel slips out of a cattle mutilation attempt and positions Bryan into a Tower of London. On spaghetti legs, the Warriors stand back up. Nigel nails a lariat. It's not quite enough. Nigel nails Bryan with elbows. Forearms follow. Bryan's not dropping. Nigel headbutts Bryan to the front and from behind before colliding with the jawbreaker lariat. Dragon isn't getting up from that. You can't call it a clean victory, but only one man gets to walk out of the building saying they're a world champion. The events from Rising Above give birth to the tag team match of Nigel McGuinness and Claudio Castagnoli versus Bryan Danielson and Jerry Lynn, or as Nigel McGuinness calls him, Geritol Lynn. The veteran begins the match and doesn't allow the world champion to out-wrestle him. Jerry eats a forearm and he fires right back, causing Nigel to flee the ring. Bryan finds himself isolated as he assumes the role of Nigel and Claudio's whipping boy. Nigel accidentally lariats his own partner, and Jerry Lynn comes into the match hot. Claudio elbow drops McGuinness before Lynn victory rolls him straight back into his partner. With friends like this, who needs enemies? I mean, seriously! With a cradle pile driver, Jerry Lynn secures a pinfall victory over Claudio Castagnoli. In 24 hours, Jerry has Nigel one-on-one, and this time his championship will be on the line. We're in Nashville, Tennessee for Southern Hostility. The vet is showered with chants of Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Although I'd be remiss to ignore the Ring of Honor World Champion has his share of vocal supporters. The commentators remind us that although Jerry Lynn is a former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, he has yet to win any titles in Ring of Honor. Nigel spends a good portion of the match in charge of the action. McGuinness throws a lariat and misses before a springboard dropkick sends him to the outside. A cross-body pin attempt follows. A Tower of London should stop Lynn's momentum, but Nigel eats an inverted DDT. Nigel also takes an air raid crash. Lynn's beginning to be a problem. Nigel hits a Tower of London to the floor. That'll stifle Jerry's propulsion. A second Tower of London is executed in the ring. Nigel's taken aback by Jerry's kickout. You could say this takes Nigel off his game because suddenly Jerry Lynn has an answer for everything. Although Nigel gets a superplex off, Jerry isn't slowing down. Lynn takes a leap outside and has a scary landing. Nigel tries to run away. The old-timer has him believing his time as champion may be over. Nigel uses a table as a weapon in hopes of eking out a cheap count-out victory. It nearly works, but Jerry gets back into the ring and remains steadfast. He even gets the cradle pile driver off. A rope break saves Nigel's bacon. The jawbreaker is countered with a lariat of his own before Jerry Lynn almost beats Nigel with a TKO. A desperate Nigel McGuinness busts out the same pin he used to stop Kevin Steen back in April. The referee didn't notice the use of the middle rope, so Nigel remains champion. It's curious that Nigel doesn't grab the gold and exit to the back. He sticks around grabbing a mic as he appears ready to sing Jerry his praises. Actually, Nigel does a 180 and says not only does Jerry Lynn not have it anymore, but he never did. He gives Lynn a tongue lashing, saying he's a bum who never made it in the business. Nigel looks to have a sneak attack up his sleeve. Lynn has it scouted and McGuinness is sent packing. We close out 2008 with Final Battle. Nigel defends the world title against Naomichi Marufuji, a man who had an epic encounter with Nigel McGuinness 2 years ago. With a Shiranui, Marufuji walked away from that match the victor. Just like back then, the men are in Manhattan, New York. Naomichi Marufuji looks to repeat history. There are dueling chants of F.U. Nigel versus Let's Go Nigel before McGuinness's music even begins. You either hate him or love him. No one can deny he's become a bona fide star in Ring of Honor. Nigel applies a nice cravat. You don't see many nice cravats nowadays. Marufuji attempts a body slam and Nigel keeps it locked in. Someone show this to William Regal. It's interesting that Nigel's targeting the head and neck. He doesn't usually do that, but it makes sense considering his hard-hitting lariats and Tower of London face plants. Marufuji employs a similar point of attack, as his Shiranui lands opponents on the back of their head. Speaking of which, Marufuji hits that move outside on the floor. As if that's not bad enough, Nigel suffers a Shiranui on the ring apron. Marufuji suffers a similar impact from a Tower of London to the apron. It's at this point McGuinness begins nursing his right arm. That will be an issue going forward. Naomichi Marufuji kicks out of one lariat and is able to get through the flying lariat. Nigel's headstand backfires as it sometimes does, and he eats a coast-to-coast from Fuji. The challenger begins throwing kicks to finish the job, but after one misses, Nigel goes for a pin. He's shot off into the ropes and boom! The old jawbreaker wins the match for McGuinness. Afterward on commentary, it's speculated that Nigel may have suffered another torn bicep. Jerry Lynn enters the ring and praises what he just witnessed. Nigel says the old dinosaur is attempting to steal his spotlight, and he doesn't appreciate it. Jerry blows his top and wants a piece of McGuinness right now. Jeez, take it easy, Jerry. Nigel doesn't want the smoke and exits through the crowd. Nigel begins 2009 meeting the young upstart Tyler Black mano a mano. Something to consider is that when Nigel beat Tyler the first time, it was after Tyler survived a 4 corners match. Tonight he's going into this contest fresh. The caveat is that this is non-title. Just like in their first encounter, Tyler turns his back and Nigel sneak attacks him. The difference is that Tyler is able to give it right back to McGuinness this time. Nigel's right arm is banged up from Final Battle. As you can see, it's taped up now. From the apron, Nigel drives Tyler's shoulder into the guardrail. Tyler has to put up with a lot of Nigel's oppressive maliciousness, but he doesn't take the nastiness lying down. Tyler keeps on McGuinness's case, and a big reason for that is because Nigel's right arm is a key handicap. Tyler's injured shoulder comes down hard on the floor from a Tower of London. This is a perfect time for Nigel to go for a tap-out victory. Tyler gets out of the hold and kicks Nigel into the ropes. Nigel bounces back, but his intended jawbreaker is countered into a buckle bomb. After that, a kick to the face is all it takes for McGuinness to stay down for the 3 count. Tyler Black will definitely be getting a championship match after that. In fact, sooner than later. Nigel's supposed to defend against Austin Aries tomorrow in Edison, New Jersey. That doesn't happen. I alluded to this earlier. Austin Aries forgoes his title opportunity because he doesn't want to waste his shot on a B show. That's utterly ridiculous. Tell you what though, that means the man who just pinned Nigel is taking Aries' place. So New Jersey gets Tyler Black versus Nigel McGuinness again, and this time if Black wins, he'll be the new Ring of Honor World Champion. Why does Tyler keep turning his back to Nigel? You'd think he'd learn. Just like last night, McGuinness comes in hot with Tyler Black firing back with just as much heat. It's all a bit much for Nigel to handle. Nigel says he's dealing with a torn bicep. He doesn't need this crap. When Nigel tries to leave, Bryan Danielson stops him and says he'll literally end the champ's life if he doesn't get back in the ring. It's a bit much, but it works. Nigel continues the match, and Tyler really seems as if he has McGuinness's number tonight. He's all over the champ. When in doubt, play the hits. A little bit of limb work will cool his jets. However, in taking charge here, Nigel becomes overconfident. Toying with a guy like Tyler Black is silly on Nigel's part considering the kid just beat him 24 hours ago. Tyler's thrown over the top rope and he seems to land in such a way that he hurts his back. Referees huddle around Black and decide to help him to the backstage area. McGuinness may be prepared to call it a night, but Tyler is not. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Through sheer willpower, Tyler Black returns to action. Nigel is anxious to be done with this match. While the fans in Edison encourage Tyler by chanting his name, he surprises Nigel by displaying just how much fight he has left in him. Nigel snaps the back of Tyler's head against the ropes and follows up with a Tower of London to the floor. By this point, Tyler Black and Jimmy Jacobs have had their falling out. The ref's attention is on the Age of the Fall's leader while Austin Aries takes Tyler out. The ref turns his attention toward Black, and Jerry Lynn from out of nowhere gives Nigel a cradle pile driver. At this point, all hell breaks loose. The locker room empties as personal rivalries almost get this match thrown out. Not one to allow Nigel off the hook, Bryan returns and demands that this nonsense stop so the world title match can resume. He's quickly dragged into the scuffle. The wrestlers take their issues to the backstage area while Ring of Honor president Kerry Silkin demands the world title match continue. What's it going to take for Nigel to walk away as champion tonight? Tyler Black has extraordinary perseverance. The trusty Tower of London on the apron slows his drive down just enough that Nigel is able to follow up with the London Dungeon. With a kick to the head, Tyler escapes the submission but eats a jawbreaker. The bottom ring rope spares him defeat. After a series of palm strikes, Tyler almost gets a surprise win with a roll-up. He kicks the side of Nigel's head and slowly crawls over the body, but Nigel's not done yet. A small package driver doesn't finish him either. Taking a page out of Danielson's book, Nigel attempts a small package. Tyler's never hit Nigel with a Phoenix Splash. That could be the game ender. Nigel avoids it though. He does not avoid a frog splash. He is able to kick out of it. There's a repeat of last night. Tyler executes a buckle bomb and then kicks the side of Nigel's head. You would think that's gotta be it. Tyler struggles to cover Nigel. He inches his body toward his opponent when suddenly the bell rings. It's announced that these men have wrestled to a 60-minute time limit draw. The thing is, they didn't. They're about 10 minutes short of that time limit. Tyler asks for more time, but Nigel scurries off with his championship belt. The fans know the men wrestled close to an hour, but they recognize this is a screwy finish. The next man to vie for gold is El Generico. He's lost 2 singles matches to McGuinness so far, and most recently a 4-way elimination. The consummate underdog has always pushed the champion well, but as we've seen, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Tonight it's not about showing that he's good enough to beat Nigel, it's about actually doing it. There's a little bit more fire underneath Generico's feet tonight than we've seen in previous outings. Nigel pulls the same trick he did in their first encounter, and once again Generico blindly falls for Nigel's scheme. From there, the champion goes in the tried and true direction one would suppose. Generico sprinkles in a smattering of resistance, letting fans know he's hanging in there. A brutal Tower of London on the ring apron leads to a flying lariat attempt, but when El Generico foils Nigel's goal, he follows up with a haluva kick that nearly costs McGuinness everything. At this point in the match, Nigel wants to put this bout to bed because he knows when Generico gets going, it can be frustratingly difficult to gunk up his engine. Kevin Steen appears to lend his spark to Generico's flickering fire. Generico catches Nigel's chin with his boot before pulling off a coast-to-coast. McGuinness kicks out of the move, but he has to use the ropes to pull through a subsequent brainbuster. Generico immediately follows with a buckle buster attempt. Nigel gets his opponent in place to eat a flying lariat instead. Generico's not giving in though. He's kicking out of moves left and right. He even almost wins via a roll-up counter to the London Dungeon. Generico boots Nigel into the ropes, but the champ bounces back with a jawbreaker. McGuinness locks in the London Dungeon once more, and this time it's too much to withstand. El Generico must tap out. Large and in charge, Brent Albright faces Nigel McGuinness in Coral Springs, Florida. Before the bell rings, Nigel shames the portly wrestling fans in attendance, showing them what a real man looks like. Brent Albright standing right there, dude. After the men shake hands, Nigel McGuinness goes for a cheap shot. Albright is not caught off guard and gets the better of his would-be attacker. Nigel gets tap-out victories with his London Dungeon. Albright gets submissions with his crowbar. It may be a matter of time before one of these men are forced to give up. And after receiving a Tower of London to a table, that man could be Brent Albright. Nigel works his opponent over, but he needs to operate with caution. Albright can lock in his crowbar on the drop of a hat. With a size and strength advantage, Albright shifts himself into second gear. He even pulls off a top turnbuckle dive to the floor. Nigel accidentally lariats the ring post, which works perfectly into Albright's plans. Brains over brawn, though. Nigel cleverly pins Albright's shoulders to the mat during a crowbar attempt. This was a close one, though, and Nigel did have to resort to using the trunks for leverage. This won't be the last time Brent Albright is an issue. You're looking at the real deal now. That's right, D'Lo Brown's in Ring of Honor, and he's the next challenger for the throne. However, Nigel's mistaken and thinks he's sharing the ring with Savio Vega. For that, there isn't a handshake tonight. D'Lo Brown slaps Nigel's face, immediately putting a lot of pressure on the champ. Nigel teases walking away from this, but it's a ruse to trick D'Lo into eating a shot from the belt. Now Nigel has his opponent right where he wants him. Nigel traps D'Lo between the guardrails and a table and jams the furniture into his throat, almost getting a count-out victory. Nigel's jawbreaker is countered into a sky high. D'Lo then executes a sit-out powerbomb from the second turnbuckle. Nigel kicks out, but he's beginning to hurt. After taking a DDT on the edge of the apron, Nigel receives a lowdown. Brown's very surprised that Nigel's able to continue. D'Lo does not relent. He leg lariats Nigel into the ropes and eats a jawbreaker. There's a rare kick out of the finisher. The men open up on one another with forearms. The men's bodies collide and apparently Brown gets his jewels jingled. A back elbow sends Nigel into the ropes and he rebounds with the jawbreaker. The champ has successfully defended his prize against a former WWE superstar. More multi-man madness awaits Nigel McGuinness in Danbury, Connecticut. It's a 4-corner elimination. McGuinness must get through Jimmy Jacobs, Jerry Lynn, and Tyler Black. Nigel clearly has the most issue with Jerry. After the veteran interfered in the world title match between he and Tyler, the champion's been itching to hand out a receipt. Jerry Lynn matches McGuinness's energy, giving the champ quite the headache. With a gut punch, Jacobs is sent reeling. The Sly Cult leader grabs Jerry's foot, letting Nigel smother Lynn's suplex attempt with a cover. Shockingly, Lynn's out first. Furious, Jerry plants Nigel with an air raid crash. Tyler capitalizes with a frog splash, forcing Nigel to kick out. A small package driver follows, but the potential pinfall is broken up by Jacobs. Bad blood boils over as Jimmy and Tyler's hatred takes center stage. Nigel has no problem assisting Jacobs. Anything to do away with Tyler. The end may be near for Nigel when Tyler nails a buckle bomb, but the super kick that usually follows is spoiled by Jacobs, sparing the champ's certain defeat. Returning the favor from earlier, Nigel tries to help Jimmy pin Tyler by holding Black's boot, but Todd Sinclair spots the misdeed. Nigel gives Tyler a Tower of London to the floor. Jimmy decides now is the time to betray Nigel as he locks in the end time. Meanwhile, an aching Tyler Black struggles to beat the 20 count and get in that ring. Jacobs releases his hold so that doesn't happen. Tyler Black is, in fact, counted out and eliminated. Behind a celebratory Jacobs lurks an angry champion. Jimmy gives Nigel a chin breaker, but McGuinness hits the ropes and bounces forward with a jawbreaker to get the pinfall victory. Brent Albright proved to be quite the beast against McGuinness once, so now the champion's world title is on the line against him. After ramming the big man's shoulder into the ring post, well, you know the rest. Mr. McGuinness goes to town with limb work. Since things aren't going Albright's way in the ring, he forces the champion outside where Nigel tastes the bitter bombardment pill. Just when it looks like Albright's becoming too much to bear, a Tower of London to the floor resets his momentum gauge. Not only does Nigel follow up with a second Tower of London, but he hits a Rainmaker. His opponent defiantly kicks out. A jawbreaker should be the coup de grace, but Albright counters it into a crowbar. After getting to the ropes, McGuinness shoves Albright into the referee, knocking him out. Brent Albright takes a Tower of London through a table. Todd Sinclair wakes up just in time to count a subsequent pin attempt. Nigel pounces with a London Dungeon. Albright turns it into a flash pin attempt before putting McGuinness in another crowbar. Nigel claws Albright's eyes in order to escape his clutches. The challenger nails an air raid crash and locks Nigel right back into a crowbar. From out of nowhere, Nigel's European ally attacks Albright, forcing the referee to call for a disqualification. Nigel has been spared a tap out this night. Nigel McGuinness finds himself teaming with a man who caused him a lot of problems early in his world title reign. That was then, though. Nigel's current issues lie with tonight's opponents, Jerry Lynn and Tyler Black. They've been nipping at the champ's gold perhaps more than anyone as of late. There can be no mercy. Almost as soon as the bell rings, Jerry Lynn takes a Tower of London to the floor. While Lynn recovers from the move, Tyler Black occupies the front lines as a lone soldier against two very hostile combatants. When Jerry is finally tagged in, he gives Nigel plenty to think about. In fact, it's Jerry who gets the last laugh tonight. With a cradle pile driver, he earns himself a pinfall victory over the champion. That's something for McGuinness to worry about. There's a more immediate issue to deal with though. Kenta of Pro Wrestling Noah is about to be Nigel's next challenger. To hype up the big title defense, Nigel teams with Davey Richards against El Generico and Kenta. There's tension here because Kenta acted as a mentor to Davey Richards at one time. These days, Davey just wants to kick his head off his shoulders. Kenta's real target tonight is McGuinness. Issues with Davey can wait. Although Nigel's right bicep is what's taped up, in this match, Nigel legitimately tears his left bicep. This hasn't been a blessed title reign, but Nigel's put one foot in front of the other throughout. Nigel tries to submit Kenta with a London Dungeon. Kenta turns it into a go-to-sleep, and that's all she wrote for tonight. Kenta has a lot of steam heading into tomorrow's show. We're back in the Hammerstein Ballroom for the 7th anniversary show, and as you can see, Nigel's left bicep is heavily taped up. If you were thinking Kenta would avoid targeting that body part, it's not the case whatsoever. McGuinness didn't walk into this match as a babyface, but Kenta's so relentless that it's hard not to sympathize with an ailing man. Nigel finally gets Kenta off his case with a Tower of London to the floor. This hurts Kenta's left arm, putting the shoe on the other foot, or maybe I should say glove on the other hand. The point is that Nigel gets to be in control, at least until he nearly taps out to the Kimura lock. He's saved by the ropes, but it seems like at every turn, his arm is ready to fall off. It's either being attacked by Kenta or it's simply keeping Nigel from executing his moves with as much force as he'd like. After giving Nigel a double stomp outside to his shoulder, Kenta unloads with a surge of energy that almost earns him a win. Desperate to coal the challenger's britches, Nigel locks in a London Dungeon. Regaining control with this guy is next to impossible. Kenta's off switch is broken. He nails a perfect go-to-sleep. A rope break stops a title change from happening. Kenta tries to follow up with something to the floor. Nigel puts the kibosh on his intentions and instead executes a Tower of London to the ring apron. Both men are hurting. They're nearly counted out. They roll into the ring at the count of 19. The Warriors tap into their reserve tanks and expend what little gas they have left. Nigel hits the go-to-sleep on Kenta, shocking the fans. It's not quite enough to end the match, so the London Dungeon is applied. A roll-up attempt gets Kenta out of the predicament. He nearly hits another go-to-sleep, but Nigel counters with a divorce court. The London Dungeon is applied again, but Kenta will not tap. Finally, Nigel bends Kenta backwards with a hold still locked in. All hope is lost. Kenta taps out because there's nothing else to be done. That's it. Nigel lets the fans know what he thinks of them afterward. It's empty bravado at this point. He's falling apart. How long can he keep this up? Considering who he has to deal with at Supercard of Honor 4, Nigel McGuinness is in a lot of trouble. Jerry Lynn just pinned the champion in a tag team match last month. McGuinness has sacrificed his health to defend the Ring of Honor World Championship, and in his vulnerable condition, this could be the end of the road. Like we saw with Kenta, Jerry Lynn has no qualms about going for Nigel's left arm. No kid gloves here. You want the belt, you do what you must to get it. Nigel rams Jerry's left arm into a guardrail. He wants to turn this into his match. As we saw with Kenta, it's not an easy thing to do when you're working with a handicap. Lynn avoids an outside Tower of London. The lariat that Nigel follows with really hurts his left arm. Regardless, he works through the pain, still getting a Tower of London off. This affects Jerry Lynn to the point he barely avoids a countout. After kicking out of a sunset bomb, Nigel is shocked at Jerry Lynn's submission attempt. It's the London Dungeon. Nigel tries to demonstrate how it's really done. Lynn actually gets out of the hold and locks Nigel's submission in once more. You have to figure it's doing way more to Nigel in this state. After that, Nigel's arm is trapped in a cross arm breaker. Jerry turns the dial up and proceeds to dominate. He hits his cradle pile driver. Nigel saves himself with a foot on the rope. Nigel McGuinness gets his jawbreaker off. Jerry Lynn uses Nigel's pin attempt to lock in another cross-arm breaker. Nigel struggles and struggles until he gets to the ropes. Nigel lets loose primal yells. He back elbows Lynn, goes for a lariat, and Lynn catches him. Lynn catches him and hits the cradle pile driver. He has done it. Jerry Lynn has won the big one. There is a new Ring of Honor World Champion. Nigel gave everything he had to make his world title reign special. It was time though. Time to move on. The fans chant, "Thank you, Nigel." After Jerry Lynn finishes his victory speech, Nigel grabs the microphone and says as life flies by, every now and again, time stands still. He says this brief moment is the point, the whole reason why wrestlers do this. He urges the fans to keep supporting Ring of Honor and the talent. There isn't much else to add. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. You see, when it comes to Nigel McGuinness, the conversation is always what could have been, when really I'm happy to focus on what actually was. I get it, people thought there would have been more to his career, maybe a WrestleMania or two. Nigel's a special talent. Although his full-time career has come and gone, we're lucky that in recent years, Nigel's been able to perform here and there. We never thought we'd see him lace his boots up again, but he shocked the wrestling world when he showed up in the Casino Gauntlet. We even got another Danielson match out of it, and to me, you can't put a price on that. He's a great wrestler, but he's a great commentator as well. There are times I'll turn on Collision just because I want to hear Nigel. The point I'm making is that Nigel McGuinness is just plain entertaining. I'm glad he's still in the business. A guy like him always has something to offer. I want to end the video with 3 simple words. Thank you, Nigel.